Welcome to a brand new deep dive. And today, we are looking at something pretty fascinating. You know, when you set out to read one of the most ancient foundational texts of Western civilization, your brain automatically prepares for, I don't know, a certain kind of reverence.
Yeah, exactly. You expect this solemn, almost isolated experience.
Right. You imagine you're engaging with history in a very tactile way, like unrolling a fragile scroll in some climate-controlled museum archive, or maybe carefully turning these heavy gold leaf pages in a silent library.
You definitely anticipate this barrier of time separating you from the ancient world, just a space totally untouched by modern noise.
But the reality of engaging with ancient scripture today is, well, it's a hilarious collision of eras, because we are diving into the very first chapter of the New Testament.
Matthew chapter 1.
Exactly, Matthew 1 in the King James Version. But for you to actually get to the words establishing this ancient sacred bloodline online, you first have to navigate a relentless maze of modern digital bureaucracy.
Oh, it is the ultimate digital paradox.
It really is. I mean, you are trying to read about a virgin birth and a lineage stretching back thousands of years. But first, you have to click past prompts asking you to accept strictly necessary cookies.
Right, and figure out how to whitelist the site on your ad blocker.
Yes, you have to dodge these giant flashing buttons demanding to know your data preferences, like do not sell or share my personal information. The irony of reading an ancient spiritual text while, navigating California data privacy laws is just unmatched.
It's incredible. You're reading a text that has fundamentally shaped millennia of human history, but you are doing it while dodging banner ads.
Banner ads for, study tools.
Yeah, ads offering 70-plus biblical study resources valued at over $5,000 for the low price of just under $6 a month. The sheer infrastructure built around this single ancient document is staggering.
But beyond the pop-ups and the ads, the platform hosting our source material actually reveals something really profound about the scale of this text today. If you go and click on the drop-down menu for available translations on this database, the list is absolute insanity.
That drop-down menu might actually be the most compelling piece of evidence for the text's enduring relevance.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, you scroll through and you find the text available in Musgo de Guerrero, which is spoken in parts of Mexico. You see the Cherokee New Testament, you find Hawaii Pidgin, you find Plaut Deech, which is a specific Mennonite dialect.
That's wild.
And then dozens of Chinese variations, from simplified to traditional to the Shen edition. This ancient Middle Eastern genealogy is currently being processed and beamed to servers and smartphones in almost every linguistic framework on the planet.
Which is just a massive global scale. But all of those millions of digital clicks, all those global translations, they ultimately point back to a single, highly audacious opening sentence. So our mission today is to digitally strip away the pop-up ads, close out the cookie policies, and look strictly at the mechanics of Matthew 1 in the King James Version.
Because the structural progression of this text is, frankly, a brilliant piece of narrative engineering.
It really is. It introduces this globally recognized figure by first constructing a massive, mathematically precise architectural family tree. And then, and this is the crazy part, it violently snaps the camera focus down to a very quiet, deeply private human crisis.
The contrast is totally jarring in the best way possible. The author begins by establishing the widest possible historical parameters before forcing you to just sit in the anxious, claustrophobic reality of a single individual.
So let's look at how that opening sentence immediately starts throwing its weight around. Moving from the database to the actual text, it makes a massive claim right out of the gate. Quote, "The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham."
It's heavy lifting.
Yeah, in 15 words. It isn't easing you into some philosophical treatise. It is establishing a royal and historical lineage, basically demanding you recognize this figure is intimately tethered to the absolute heavyweights of the historical record.
Right. The author is functioning a lot more like a lawyer presenting a legal brief than a storyteller just, setting a scene.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
They're presenting credentials. And the way they organize those credentials relies on a very deliberate, highly structured mathematical architecture. Because if you look at verse 17, the text explicitly hands you its blueprint.
The 14-14-14 structure.
Exactly. It takes this vast, sprawling stretch of ancient history and neatly divides it into 3 distinct eras, claiming each contains exactly 14 generations.
Right, the text says from Abraham to David are 14 generations. And then from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations.
14.
14. But we really need to pause here because this demands some scrutiny. I mean, anyone who has ever looked into their own ancestry knows that family trees are chaotic.
Oh, completely messy.
Right. You have overlapping generations, some people living into their 90s, some dying young, second cousins marrying in. It never naturally falls into perfectly neat, symmetrical boxes like that.
It really doesn't.
So doesn't this perfectly balanced math feel a bit like, I don't know, hindsight bias? Anyone can draw a bullseye around an arrow after it hits the wall. How do you know this isn't just the author forcing a rigid artificial narrative onto the random chaos of history?
Well, that tension, that push and pull between historical chaos and structural order is exactly what you are supposed to notice.
Okay, how so?
Because ancient genealogies did not function the way modern ancestry websites do. Today, a genealogy is a strictly biological, chronological receipt.
Just the raw data.
Right. But in the ancient Near East, a genealogy was a theological and political document. It was actually common practice to telescope a lineage.
Telescope, like zooming in.
Sort of. It means they would intentionally skip certain minor generations to highlight the major structural pillars of a bloodline. It was a mnemonic device as much as a historical record.
So they're curating the list to make a specific point.
Precisely. The author isn't just a biological record keeper. They are interpreting the entire trajectory of a people. By structuring it as 14-14-14, the text purposefully anchors this new figure, Christ, to the highest peak of their historical consciousness.
Which would be King David.
Yes, King David and the golden age of the United Monarchy. But it equally anchors him to the lowest, most traumatic valley of their existence, which is the violent exile and carrying away into Babylon.
So it's the ultimate political triumph and the ultimate societal collapse.
Exactly. And by framing history in these symmetrical thirds, the author is communicating a profound sense of destiny. They are arguing that the chaotic roller coaster of triumph and trauma wasn't random at all.
It had a purpose.
Right. The symmetry implies a divine choreography. It suggests that history itself has been moving with this rhythmic, purposeful heartbeat toward this exact culmination.
But that neat, perfect mathematical architecture starts to look incredibly complicated when you actually inspect the bricks used to build it.
No, it gets very messy.
Because we've established the rigid 14-generation structure. The scaffolding is perfect. But as you read through the specific names, the actual begats, the text includes some aggressively complicated details that kind of threaten to undermine the very royal credential it's trying to build.
It creates a fascinating friction. You have this rigid, divine mathematical structure populated by wildly imperfect, highly controversial human lives.
Yeah, because the text establishes this hypnotic rolling rhythm at first. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas. It rolls on like this traditional patriarchal drum beat.
Right. Father to son, father to son.
But then the author intentionally breaks their own rhythm to highlight specific women, which was highly irregular for a formal ancient Middle Eastern genealogy.
The inclusions are very purposeful disruptions. The text goes out of its way to name them. It says Phares and Zara of Thamar, then Booz of Rachab, and Obed of Ruth.
But the disruption that completely derails the traditional royal propaganda is in verse 6. The text says, quote, David the king begat Solomon of her that had been the wife of Urias.
Yeah, that is a massive pivot.
The author refuses to even use her actual name, Bathsheba. She is explicitly identified by her previous marriage to Urias. And let's just think about the political weight of that for a second.
Yeah.
The story of David and Bathsheba is one of the darkest, most scandalous abuses of power in the entire historical record.
It's an incredibly grim story.
David slept with his soldier's wife and then had that soldier, Urias, murdered on the front lines to cover it up. So if you were writing a resume to prove the divine royal perfection of a bloodline, why on earth would you point a flashing neon arrow at a massive murderous royal scandal right in the middle of it?
Well, because it completely subverts the genre of royal propaganda. Think about it. Traditional ancient propaganda exists to sanitize the past.
Well, you want to look good.
Exactly. You erase the scandals, you delete the usurpers, and you present this unbroken line of perfect mythic kings. By intentionally highlighting the wife of Urias, the text is fundamentally altering the nature of the credential it is presenting.
It's forcing the reader to deal with the reality of it.
Yes, it is forcing the reader to acknowledge the moral failures, the abuses of power, and the deeply painful realities embedded in this royal history.
It's basically airing the family's absolute worst dirty laundry on page 1.
Which serves a brilliant theological purpose. It grounds this sweeping 42-generation history in stark, unvarnished reality. It tells you that the lineage isn't a sanitized myth built by flawless demigods.
It's built by flawed people.
Right. It demonstrates that the divine choreography we discussed earlier, that 14-14-14 heartbeat of history, survives and operates through the absolute messiness and corruption of human reality rather than by erasing it. It validates the authenticity of a line by refusing to hide its scars.
Wow. And just think about the narrative whiplash that sets up. The text spends 17 verses building this massive historical runway. We have covered millennia of patriarchs, empires, catastrophic exiles, and royal scandal.
The momentum is epic.
It is. And then in verse 18, the text slams on the brakes. The sweeping drone shot over centuries of history suddenly cuts to a tight, handheld, claustrophobic shot of a domestic crisis. We literally go from the fate of nations to a deeply private dilemma.
The pivot is startling. Verse 18 outlines the situation with blunt, uncompromising clarity. Mary is espoused to Joseph, but before they come together, she is found with child of the Holy Ghost.
And this isn't just a complicated modern dating scenario. In the ancient cultural context, being espoused was a legally binding status.
It was as serious as marriage.
Right. And from Joseph's perspective, and the narrative locks entirely onto his internal perspective here, his betrothed is pregnant, and he possesses the absolute certainty that he is not the father.
It's an existential threat for him.
It's a legal, social, and religious catastrophe. In a small, ancient community with intense whisper networks and severe punitive laws, this is huge.
Yeah.
But the text zeroes in on his reaction, and it is entirely unexpected.
Because verse 19 defines his character before it describes his action, it explicitly calls him a just man. And because he is governed by this sense of justice, he's not willing to make her a public example.
So what does he do?
His chosen solution is that he was minded to put her away privily, meaning privately.
He's opting for extreme damage control. It honestly feels akin to a quiet corporate exit today, where both parties sign non-disclosure agreements and walk away so nobody's reputation is entirely destroyed.
That's a great analogy.
Because he possesses every legal and cultural right in that society to expose her, to humiliate her, and to demand public vindication. Under the strictest interpretations of ancient law, her life could have been in actual physical danger.
Absolutely.
But instead, he is agonizing in isolation, trying to figure out how to quietly dissolve a legally binding contract to save everyone involved from total ruin. He is navigating a legally impossible, emotionally devastating situation with just a remarkable degree of restraint.
And the author leverages this moment to emphasize the profound fragility of history. Just consider the massive contrast the text has constructed up to this point. You have 42 generations of kings who commanded vast armies, built monumental temples, and dictated the fate of millions. Yet the immediate survival of this entire lineage, the hinge on which all of this sweeping history swings, suddenly rests on the shoulders of one ordinary, uncelebrated man pacing in a room.
Just a guy trying to figure out how to break off an engagement without causing a scene.
Exactly. The grand machinery of history is suddenly entirely dependent on a localized moment of human decency.
Which brings the narrative tension to its breaking point. Just as Joseph finalizes his quiet, pragmatic exit strategy, the text shifts from human damage control to direct supernatural intervention.
Because while he is thinking on these things, while he is literally turning over the logistics of a quiet divorce in his mind, the angel of the Lord appears to him in a dream, and the initial address is vital here.
What does the angel say?
The angel does not just say his name. The angel says, quote, "Joseph, thou son of David."
Oh, wow. That immediately yanks this isolated private moment back into the massive royal genealogy we just spent 17 verses absorbing.
Right, it reminds him of his placement in the architecture.
It totally places the weight of the 14-14-14 structure squarely on his shoulders.
And then the angel delivers the command, "Fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife," providing the profound confirmation that the child is conceived of the Holy Ghost.
And then comes the instruction that officially transfers authority. Because the angel commands Joseph to name the child, the quote is, "Thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins."
Yes.
But right after delivering the specific name, the text executes this fascinating maneuver. It explicitly links this private bedroom revelation to an ancient macro-level prophecy.
It brings in the prophet Isaiah.
Right. It states that all this was done to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, quote, "Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which being interpreted is God with us.
The author is demanding the reader hold two distinct concepts simultaneously by presenting this dual naming convention.
Yeah, this is where the mechanics of the text get incredibly dense. The angel gives a direct order. Name the child Jesus.
Yeah.
But the prophecy immediately interjects to declare his name will be Emmanuel. Why does the narrative require two names here?
Well, the name Jesus, which is rooted in Yeshua, literally translates to his function. It's the action he will perform, saving his people from their sins.
Okay, the action.
But Emmanuel represents his underlying nature, state of being, God with us.
Oh, so it functions as a theological bridge.
Exactly. The massive 42-generation royal family tree represents the physical, earthly reality of a people waiting for deliverance. The virgin birth represents a sudden supernatural intervention.
Right.
So by layering the name Jesus, the earthly action of saving with the name Emmanuel, the divine reality of God's presence, the text is arguing that this child is the mechanism that bridges the physical history of Israel with the supernatural presence of the divine.
You cannot understand the figure without accepting both the earthly function and the supernatural nature. And that dual revelation provides the catalyst that resolves the narrative paralysis. Joseph wakes up from his sleep, and he completely abandons his pragmatic plan for a quiet, dignified exit.
He pivots entirely.
He executes the angel's commands to the letter. He takes Mary as his wife. The text meticulously notes he knew her not until she brought forth her firstborn son. And then he completes the process by officially calling his name Jesus.
And the tension of the entire chapter dissolves in that single act of obedience.
Just like that.
Yeah, the grand historical lineage, stretching across centuries of wars, political collapses, and royal triumphs, was entirely stalled. It required the quiet, unseen compliance of a just man willing to discard his own reputation and legal rights to move history forward.
Without Joseph's choice, the mathematical architecture remains incomplete.
It falls apart without him.
It is a staggering amount of narrative ground to cover in just 25 verses. Let's pull the lens all the way back and look at the terrain we just crossed in this deep dive.
He covered a lot.
We really did. We started by wrestling with a modern digital interface, right? Dodging cookie policies and subscription prompts while marveling at a drop-down menu, proving this text is actively engaging dozens of global languages.
From Amuzgo de Guerrero to Hawaii Pidgin.
Exactly. And then we stripped that away to examine a mathematically structured 42-generation architectural family tree spanning millennia of kings and exiles. And finally, we crashed into a quiet, private dream that resolved a legally devastating personal crisis.
The text forces you to constantly adjust your scale. You have to understand the epic, sweeping promises made to ancient patriarchs, but you also have to understand the terrifying social dynamics of an ancient betrothal.
It's the ultimate zoom-in.
It really is. It insists that the macro history and the micro-human experience are completely dependent on each other.
Which leaves a final profound mechanism of this text for you, the listener, to ponder. We trace the hypnotic rhythm of that genealogy for 17 verses. And that royal bloodline is forged strictly through biology.
Fathers begatting sons.
Right, an unbroken chain of biological transfer, begat, begat, begat. But when the text hits verse 16, that biological chain shatters. Joseph is not the biological father.
The biological premise fails.
The entire biological premise of the royal credential fails. Yet, it is Joseph's specific legal action of claiming the child, of taking Mary as his wife, and officially naming the boy Jesus that legally and structurally grafts this child into that ancient 42-generation royal bloodline of David.
The action of cleansing him is what matters.
Exactly. So, as you process the mechanics of this ancient document, ask yourself, what does this text suggest to you about the true power of adoption in claiming someone versus the power of strict biology in creating a lasting, world-changing legacy?